afternoon to all the attendees here. Today, we are going to discuss a very interesting topic which touches us on a daily basis because all of us, I'm sure, are doing online payments. Uh, the last couple of years, we have seen tremendous growth in the digital payment. What I understand in last just 10 months, the digital payments increased by 80%. The numbers may be a little here and there, but you can see the amount of growth that we saw. If we go back to demonetization 2016 and there onwards, the UPI introduction, the wallet penetration, the payment aggregator industry now that is going to get regulated, we have seen tremendous growth along of the digital payment, but alongside also the regulation by the Reserve Bank of India. Now, when we talk about digital penetration, one important thing in the Indian context is to realize that India is just not one India. That is, I always look at it in that perspective on any regulation. It is four Indias in one, one full country. That means you will have different literacy levels. When I say literacy level, the digital payment related literacy levels as well as to how to use it, to what extent, to use it, etc. Right? So we realize that the number of changes that we have seen in last couple of years are tremendous, and we have seen some friction in the digital payment sector, which we are here to discuss. And to discuss that, we have very eminent panel. We have been privileged to get all the stakeholders at one place. We have the bank representation with Mohit coming from Axis Bank. We have Sudipta, which is a newly going to be regulated PAs, which is from PayU. He will give us a good perspective as to when now they are going to regulate it, what does it mean for them. We have Sheetal. She has been a payments lawyer for as long as I know her. Currently, she is with Netflix. And we have industry body representation in Ashish Agarwal. He has, he is the policy head from the NASSCOM side, and we have interacted quite a bit on various industry issues, and you will see a length and breadth of experience coming from there. And of course, I have my stalwart colleagues, Huzefa and Aaron, who have been working in the payment space with me. So before we get into and deep dive from from all the stakeholders on what issues we have faced in the digital payment sector, I'm going to request Huzefa to do the tone setting on what regulations, because we understand that the audience is quite mixed. It is important to do the tone setting to understand what are the 2 or 3 key regulations that we are going to talk about, and then the experience sharing for each of those compliances. So over to Huzefa to sort of quickly glance through those regulations.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the introduction and welcome all participants. I think in the last couple of years, right, let me just step back so everybody is on the same page. There are three buckets in which, I would like to divide, this discussion for today and, link up to the law in relation to these three, buckets. The first one is the entire process for recurring payments and e-mandates, which was introduced in 2019. The second one is tokenization, which was also introduced in 2019. And third, which kind of segues into this, are the PAPG guidelines. And more importantly, the data restrictions within these PAPG guidelines. So coming straight to the point on the first bucket, and I'm going to actually focus on what is relevant for our discussion itself. The first is the process for e-mandates and recurring payments. Now, first and foremost, this was introduced in 2019, in August 2019, and the applicability of this, along with subsequent amendments, is for all cards, debit card, credit cards, and prepaid instruments, which includes wallets and even UPI. The initial compliance deadline was March 2021. Then there was one extension, a final extension given as of September 2021, and it actually, the processes went live as of October 2021. So as of today, the processes as stipulated under this regulatory regime which is specifically in relation to the processes for recurring payments on e-mandates, is live. Now, what does it mean vis-a-vis October 1, 2021? Because the obligations per se, the compliance obligations under this are on the instrument issuer or card issuer. So what needs to be done, right? So just from, again, this is from a context setting perspective. Whenever there is a e-mandate or a standing instruction for recurring payments which is registered, the law essentially said that at the time of registration, of course, there is an AFA which is required, which is the authentic factor validation. Along with that, you also need to the user needs to register the periodicity of the mandate, the validity of the mandate, the amount of the mandate. More importantly, on the processes front, there was a requirement of pre-transaction notifications, and the pre-transaction notifications were details in relation to 24 hours, within 24 hours, what is the card debit amount going to be, who is the merchant, so forth and so on. Within the pre-transaction notification of 24 hours, there was also an opt-out which had to be provided. Simultaneously, once the transaction happened, there were also compliances from a post-notification perspective. Alongside it, grievance redressal mechanisms were there. And lastly, to sum it up, the user had to be given a choice as to how the medium of which these notifications need to be received, whether it's going to be like a SMS or emails or any other platform. So this is just a quick download when it came to the processes for recurring payments. And again, to reiterate, this has already gone live as of October 1, 2021. There is no further extension on this. It sounds quite simple in terms of what I said, but believe me, all our colleagues, the various industry associations, and our co-speakers are going to discuss and delve into this further. So this was one bucket, which this was a completely interesting new regime which was laid down in 2019, and finally the implementation has already rolled out. The second quick bucket which I'm going to talk on, which is the talk of the town, is tokenization. Now, again, this regime itself was introduced in 2019, 6 months or 7 months prior to the recurring payment processes being initiated. There were subsequent amendments also on the tokenization front, but I think first and foremost, what is a token? A token is nothing but, in simple words, if I need to explain it, it is a replacement of actual card details with an alternate code which is called a token. And through subsequent amendments, it is a combination of card details. Basically, it has to have three things. It's a combination of card details, code linked to the token requester, and third, device. The device thing was further extended to card on file tokenization. So instead of the device, you could also have a merchant identification token, and the merchant identification could also be the token requester. Similar to registration of an e-mandate, there is some overlaps. It needs to start through an AFA. There have to be given, the registrar has to be given options in terms of how he needs to or she needs to register it in terms of the payment limits, periodicity, so forth and so on. There are other compliance details as well. Like, for example, if you're doing a card on file tokenization, a list of merchants into which the user has registered. But more importantly, before I move forward on this, more importantly, tokenization as a solution as of today can be offered only by card networks, or they can be offered by card issuers. This is a very important point which will segue further as and when we discuss this further. So this was the law so far. There was one final circular on this topic which was introduced, which is of extreme importance, which was on September 7, 2021, which essentially said that with effect from Jan 1, 2022, for any sort of online transactions, no entities in a card transaction would be allowed to store card data other than the card issuer or the card networks. It also said that all previous data needs to be purged. Of course, the relevant entities in a transaction can, for limited transaction tracking purposes or reconciliation purposes, show the name of the card user vis-a-vis the 4 digits of the card number, the last 4 digits of the card number, and lastly, the compliance of all of this rests on the card network. So this was something very, very relevant, which the final law came out on September 7, 2021, and that law also permitted card on file tokenization. So this was the current position on tokenization. Unlike the recurring payments, which is already gone live as of October 1st, the implementation vis-a-vis, how we kind of look at card storage, there are just 16 days left as of Jan 1, 2022, that needs to be implemented. And I'm sure we're going to discuss this in greater detail further. Last 30 seconds to quickly, segue this into the PAPG guidelines. Not going to get into what they are, but more importantly, they were introduced in March 2020. For the purposes of our discussion on March 31st, 2021, within those guidelines, there were further clarifications, which essentially said that merchants as well as payment aggregators cannot store card data, and to implement the overall solution where they don't store card data, they were given a timeline as of December 31st, 2021 to implement alternative solutions such as tokenization. So to sum it up, this is where the industry stands. Tokenization as solutions are being offered, but we are going to discuss, through the session, how does the interplay, be vis-a-vis card storage details and who offers it and who stores it in the ecosystem. So Gauri, over to you. This was a quick snapshot.
Thank you. Thank you for that tone setting, because when we are going to use these terms throughout the discussion for the audience, it is important to have this background. Now, directly, let's jump into the experience. So what we plan to do, for the sake of audience, let me just do sort of the way we want to, steer the conversation is initially to talk about the recurring payments that has already gone live on the 1st of October. The reason we want to revisit that is to see that whether it was successful, because it was 2 years was given to all the stakeholders to comply, but we as lawyers saw that industry was still struggling till the end to comply. So why was that? What could have been done better? What are the action items basis that? And the second part is on tokenization. We'll take a general understanding as to where we stand. We do have question answer kind of section available here. So those in the audience, you want to put across questions to the panel members, please feel free to put it there. Throughout the conversation, we'll try to address those questions as well. So with that background, over to you, Mohit. First to sort of give your perspective, followed by from Sudipta and Sheetal and Ashish in that order. If we can hear your experience on the recurring payment and what could have been done better.
So thanks, Gauri, for the introduction and asking me to join this esteemed panel. They're good friends here. But just to give you a perspective, see, this is sort of tokenization is sort of an inflection point. Understand from RBI's perspective, they are trying to protect customers' interest ultimately, right? We've got so many news around data getting leaked, and especially when the cardholder data gets leaked from a entity which is not regulated, right? Then it becomes even tougher to find out, and news and information like that comes through dark web, which is not the best place to get news from, right? So this is sort of ultimately a big move from RBI from customer data protection point of view. And I've been in payments industry for a good 20 years now. I don't know if you remember, we used to use Magstripe card, and when we moved to chip-based transaction, which is 2FA, and we had to enter the PIN on the terminal, that was kind of a big movement, and there was similar amount of resistance, right? Because you're adding a hop by putting a PIN in the terminal to do a transaction, and tokenization actually is adding to that hop in a online world. So it has big implications everywhere. I mean, Huzaifa just voiced out, but the high impact points are that, one, obviously there is a deadline that is looming on us about the tokenization guideline. Second big impact is there is a explicit customer consent required. Now, what does that mean is that there is a huge amount of data that is lying where there is already a customer consent that has been taken. What happens to that, right? That's the second big impact that we see. Third big impact is that, as Josefa was mentioning, not everyone can store the card data, right? There is only issuer and network that can store card data. And again, there is a huge repository of database lying there. And lastly, the UI UX, which you were mentioning for the customer, will change completely. So from a banking perspective, understand when you add hops to a transaction, the chances of failure increases, right? And in an online world, a success rate of 50 basis point also makes so much of difference in the amount of GMV that is running around in the whole system, can make or break certain organizations, right? So there are implications around it. There is a 2-year window that RBI had given, but the amount of people that need to come into play to get this tokenization done are large, right? And there was a recent industry call also where RBI actually took a stock, and the good news is that at least the networks and the big aggregators are ready. I think where the concern still lies is the end tail, which is the small merchants and merchants starting to accept tokenization. So long story short, I think it is a good move by RBI in terms of customer protection, but there is a lot of technology support required, and there are certain bits and pieces of regulation, which is what happens to the old data and who can store the cardholder data, because ultimately all that repository of data and experience is what we had made for customer interest. So those clarity are yet to come, so that it'll evolve over a period of time. So there is a certain amount of flux still there, but just to give you some good perspective is that banks, networks, and major aggregators, including PayU, my colleague from PayU is also here on the call. Most of them are ready with some kind of solution. Does that help? Gauri, over to you.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. But if you could also share, on the recurring side, what could have been done better? If you could just throw some light on that.
No, so could have been better is I think the execution timeline. If we could, if all the stakeholders could have met, I think the mandate is clear, right? You need to adhere to the railroads that RBI has created. I think, and this is a conversation that we had within our compliance world also,
Sure.
is that there was sufficient notice given to us, which is what you were also referring to. The only thing is when the notice is given to us, there are other stakeholders also involved in the ecosystem, which is networks, payment aggregators, etc. Everyone. I think that was a miss from that is something that we could have done better.
Sure. Thanks for that. Sudipta, over to you. Again, because now you were not a regulated entity, now you're going to get regulated entity. And when I say you, I mean the payment aggregators, and therefore, the compliance piece also that will come your way, including the storage restrictions and all of that. I want to deal with storage restriction point that Mohit you mentioned, but I will come to that specifically because I do understand that several issues vis-a-vis fraud detection and all are linked to that, how you are able to analyze the data. So we will handle that definitely. But Sudipta, over to you first on the recurring, and then again I'll do one more round on the tokenization.
Sure. Thank you, Gauri. I think it's an honor to be on the panel and speaking to everybody. So we'll start on the recurring piece. So see, I believe the guidelines around recurring, right? I think they're pretty well welcomed by everybody, right? Because ultimately, they empower the customer and it ensures safer transactions, right? So there is no doubt that whoever is on the panel, whoever is in the audience, I think everybody is welcoming these regulations, right? And if you look at RBI, they are pretty open. They are pretty probably one of the most progressive globally. And if you look at the whole reasoning for the recurring payments, right? So there were two key guidelines, right? One is 24 hours before you should get a text message, and there is a limit. So I think it was great because if you look at, right, subscription or subscribing to something is very easy, right? But the process to cancel is so tedious, right? I mean, if you, as I speak, right, if you go to Twitter and just enter newspaper cancellation, the first tweet that you will get is somebody in the US has written that there should be a law requiring easy cancellation of any consumer subscription. So it's not just in India, everywhere, canceling a subscription is so difficult, right? And if you see, if I miss, let's say, canceling a subscription by, let's say, 10 minutes or an hour, the minimum that, it gets extended by 30 days, it can go as high as 365 days also, right? So it was kind of unfair on the part of providers also, right, to not provide an easy process to cancel any subscriptions. I think the logic behind it for the regulator was great. I think everybody agrees to that. So yeah, I think so that is one. See, the other thing that I want to really highlight is while the intention was great, there are use cases, there are merchants which have really been impacted, right? So if you see the latest news that I read today morning, for smaller businesses, they were not able to use SaaS software services, they were not able to use maybe placing ads or anything to do with mailing, and especially online businesses, right? So they kind of had to suffer a 20 to 40% revenue drop, right? So while on the positive side, the intention was there, but one had to take into account the the issues that especially the small businesses had to face, right? Because of this sudden regulation, if I can call it, right? So yeah, so I think that's pretty much what I have to say, in terms of the recurring on the impact. And I think on the tokenization front, I guess you're going to circle back, right?
Yeah. So I think just to take one example forward, I was speaking at some other panel on a similar subject couple of days back, and very interesting example given was the insurance payments. So people missed out because this 1st October deadline, people actually missed out on making, premium payments, and they lapsed. And, people actually suffered because they could not now have the insurance available, when it was required. So the impact was, we believe that, the impact may be only for the bigger players. That is not so. Individual level also, people have unfortunately suffered because of this sudden thing. And the 2-year timeline that I mentioned, we need to realize that 1 year out of that, or maybe more than 1 year, was in the pandemic, where people were still struggling with their lives. So was it realistic to keep that 1st October itself, is a question after what we have gone through, as a not only as a country but as the world, right? So over to you, Sheetal. I know you may have some specific views on the recurring and the experience that you went through.
Absolutely. Thank you, Gauri. I think one thing I would want to collectively say is let's look at impact on consumers. So we're not looking at impact on merchants, on banks, on card schemes, on payment aggregators. The challenge is the impact that this will create on the consumer. Now, if I would like to go more in deep dive into the infrastructural challenges. So as Sudipta rightly mentioned, the guidelines were vastly accepted as a move by RBI, but by the industry. I think the industry was very happy that there's a manner in which we can adequately do a reoccurring payments. But the manner in which it's implemented, or the manner in which we can implement, due to some of the conditions mentioned in the guidelines. Before getting into the conditions, I would like to say that these guidelines are not mandated on any of the stakeholders, regulated stakeholders for that matter. These guidelines say that if you want to provide recurring transactions, then you need to do it in this manner. I think the number one challenge follows from there, where there's lapse in time or delay in implementation, as well as delay. Some players, long tail banks, may not even want to comply or want to participate in recurring transactions because the cost of compliance is much higher than the amount they'll earn from these recurring transactions. So I would say one of the essences there. Now let's get into the infrastructure itself. This requires there to be a body, be it a card scheme or, for example, a third-party service provider. In this case, BillDesk took the first move, and other payment aggregators or payment gateways, TSPs, are following, where there's an infrastructure being created where every single acquiring bank, issuing bank, card scheme, and then payment aggregator, and then merchant needs to integrate with the system for reoccurring transactions to take place. Now, in order for a merchant to provide reoccurring transactions to a consumer, or consumer to get a adequate, seamless experience that they're getting with reoccurring transactions today, all these players need to be seamlessly integrated into the system. Unfortunately, there has been delays in that. Some because of cost of compliance, some because it may not be priority compared to others. Check and balances of who has integrated. So that's number one problem that we have faced. Because these guidelines are not mandated, people do not have a timeline in which they need to comply. Eventually, who gets impacted? It's the consumer who gets impacted, who's not being able to receive reoccurring payments that they have opted for and consented for. Because all of us, as per the legacy rails, which is what Visa, MasterCard, and all card schemes have been providing all around the world, we're processing reoccurring transactions till today. Number two challenge that we face over here is I think we need to work together as an industry instead of saying one player or the other player is not ready, but to see how this infrastructure could be implemented together and give that clear guidelines to RBI. I think that's where we were lacking here, where everyone was looking at where they were prepared instead of looking at, are we able to provide an adequate experience to the consumer as a whole community? I think that's something that we should learn from when it comes to card tokenization and the discussion we'll have further. Another aspect on card tokenization falls is that lack of interoperability. So once I have integrated with one TSP to provide this system, understand that when another TSP comes in right now, I'm going to have to go through that entire process with my consumer in order for them to be integrated onto reoccurring on that particular platform. So for example, there's one TSP who's providing this experience. There'll be another TSP who'll provide this experience. This is not interoperable. If a consumer has consented to a mandate on this particular platform, unfortunately, that is not being passed on to that. So there's a challenge there with TSPs being the leaders instead of maybe card schemes or somewhere the banks, where there's lack of interoperability and a consumer will have to integrate, or the merchant will have to take the consent for the consumer to be integrated with each different platform. So these are some of the challenges with reoccurring. I think we need to have a different session to deep dive into each one of these and how we can make this seamless. And in the next session part where you're going to ask about tokenization, I would then highlight how tokenization brings in another challenge for reoccurring because it's not ready for reoccurring at the moment. So these are some of the points, Gauri. I wanted to deep dive actually into the fact that, again, highlighting, let's look at card tokenization differently, guys. Let's look at it how we as an industry, how ready are we to provide a seamless, identical solution to what customers are receiving today? And how we can work together and look at timelines required for that.
Understood. Understood. So Ashish, I'm going to come to you with a slightly different sort of outlook to this entire thing, because if right from Prime Minister Modi we have been talking about ease of doing business, digital digital India, digital payments penetration, less cash rather, economy, etc. So what we heard, as Sheetal said, I just want to take that point forward, that when you're creating an ecosystem, on the one hand you say you can't do this, but on the other hand, whatever is required to do this can't, whatever is required to be mandated, that is not being mandated, and there is no incentive. For example, maybe 4 or 5 top banks are ready in the ecosystem, right? But the smaller banks, if you're going to a rural area, you want people to start using this digital payment, there will be smaller banks who need to spend on this infrastructure. So as an industry body, how are you looking at creating that ecosystem where people are incentivized to participate? Is there any technology which is made available generally to everybody? How do you look at this more from a enabling the entire all the stakeholders in the ecosystem?
No, definitely, Gauri. I think a very important point, and if I just step away entirely from this RBI and payment discussion for a moment, See, there are a lot of conversations which are happening in terms of digital public good infrastructure, right? And in all of this conversation, one of the things I think where, and it's surprising sometimes because you don't expect it from the government, but it is happening, is that the line ministries are, for example, actually engaging a lot with the industry. So if I just take the example of the unified health interface, which is being developed, so you find that the Ministry of Health is actually doing huge, fairly routine and kind of deep conversations with different parts of the industry before they even come to terms with what they want to do. So sadly, at least from an RBI context, I think that piece is missing. And trust me, even if you are the most mature regulator in the country, you can't imagine in the tech world what are the use cases which are being implemented. And therefore, when you're thinking of regulations, you're always going to come up short if you're not really being in a consultative mode. So I think that's the key to getting a regulator to be effective in this sense. So and you talked about SME. So we were just looking at 4 days back data, and I'm not going to name the banks, but so we looked at 2 large banks who are live on this. So one bank is listing out a list of 33 merchants who are live. None of them is an SME, right? Similarly, with another bank listing out X number of merchants, none of them is SME. Then we also said, okay, forget private banks. Let's look at the big PSU banks. So if you look at, again, 2 banks who have gone live and all of that, they don't even publish data. So we are in the midst of, I don't think we have learned the full expensive lessons of the recurring payment itself. And just to go back one step back, why did this come out clearly? So recurring payments were happening, right? Credit cards. I think the thing was we wanted to get recurring payment on debit cards. So that was the facilitation that was being attempted. And then you came up with one set of regulation which would apply to both debit and credit. So now you are in a situation where something which was working well, and then obviously RBI did well to add in terms of consumer, putting the consumer into the center and empowering. So that's the great thing. Nobody's fighting that. That's good. But now in this situation, you mentioned insurance, Corey, but with this transaction limit of 5,000, you are actually sitting in a lot of annual subscriptions where you are now going to struggle. A lot of international cloud service providers, for example, a lot of subscriptions still struggling. So when you think about the recurring payment, I think Sheetal mentioned a good outcome to say that, this collective approach of building the solution. So from a merchant perspective, it doesn't matter if 2 networks are ready, 20 banks are ready, 5 PAGs are ready. So I have 1,000 customers. How many customers can I onboard onto the new guideline? So irrespective of the statistics which the regulated entities have as their individual readiness, so all the people can be individually ready in some, not all the people, I mean a certain number of people, but that's not going to solve for the larger community. So I think that's the bit in terms of the recurring mandate and where we need to go next on this, and we can talk about it a little later. But I think RBI now needs to do a 2.0 on the recurring mandate itself based on the feedback that and the lessons. So one set of learning has to go back into the recurring payment itself, and the second set of learnings has to go into how it implements the card on file tokenization. Because trust me, asking merchants to delete the data as on 31st without them having any visibility on that is going to be 5x or 10x time the problem of the recurring payment. But that I'm sure we can come to a little later.
Sure. No, that was absolutely, important. I think from the initial part of the discussion, the takeaway is that it could have been more consultative, right? Even today, we can still do consultative process for recurring, that is 2.0 that you mentioned. And if we can also separately, even the audience, requesting the audience also to give us the feedback, and we can sort of, put together something. And we also as lawyers have experienced several questions. Unfortunately, the time may be short to discuss. And as Sheetal said, maybe one more conversation on the implementation part, right? From the consent, how is the data flowing, who's storing what pieces, etc. Right? So those are equally important pieces of discussion. So Mohit, back to you. Now the question is, though you have already touched upon tokenization, if you can explain to us, where do you see from a readiness perspective, are we ready to go live? When I say we, as the entire chain, whether the testings have happened, with the PAs and from the PAs, to the merchants, to sort of not only to create the tokens, but to process the tokens through and through. So if you can just give us a bird's eye view on where we stand and what still needs to be done, that would be extremely helpful.
Yeah, sure. So you'll need to go back to a certain extent, because see, the tokenization guidelines actually existed long time back, right? But they were limited to form factor. So tokenization as a concept is, and in fact, Google Pay used it really well. So when the new guideline around tokenization had come, we had actually requested RBI to remove the form factor thing, and then they allowed it on desktop, etc. Everything. So tokenization as a concept is not an old concept. It's just that there are more hurdles, or there are more changes that have been added to it. But just to give you a perspective, we have most of the networks, as I told you earlier, most of the networks, aggregators, etc. ready. But as with all machinery, there are always teething problems. There is there is teething problems, and there is long tail, right?
Yeah.
And you generally end up like, for example, maybe PayU, kind of a big aggregator, is ready, but there are these small time aggregators. Then maybe Netflix might be, being a large merchant, will be focused for all the key players in the industry, but there are small players, which my fellow colleague from NASSCOM was alluding to. What happens to those small merchants? Because ultimately it has to go till the end of the pie, because everybody is storing data, right? So realistically, it would require another 6 months to at least a year, 6 months to a year to at least get the long tail or the small merchants getting onboarded. That is in terms of getting merchants, right? And then, as Sheetal was saying, just from pure customer impact, there is a UI UX, right? There is the user interface also. Customers need to get used to it. One-time consent is required. Then every time desubscribing, resubscribing, there is additional hop. Earlier, you used to remember CVV and etc. and do the tokenization, do the transaction seamlessly. So there is there is a time that will require to reach the end merchant or the small merchants, which are actually now evolving in the digital ecosystem. Second is just the customer experience, in terms of customer getting used to the whole process flow might also take time, which is why I'm saying realistically it is a good 6 months, 1 year before the whole ecosystem gets used to it.
Understood. No, that is very helpful. And I want to re-emphasize here on the small merchant piece, because one of the conversations also is that the big merchants may be ready and the smaller ones that are just coming up, they should not just lose out on the business, and they actually, this becomes a barrier of entry, for them
See,
or rather a business, right, for them.
See, isme na, you need to understand that large merchants are wanting this, right? There is a regulation. I want to do tokenization, and they're to tell when as a bank or a technology provider, I go to these large merchants, they are more receptive that this is like a make or break situation. In a small merchant case, one, he has to agree that this is a solution that will help him, right? That barrier of him understanding that you need to adopt this solution to grow your business, because see, your current SI mandate and your current flow will be redundant over a period of time. So large merchants is still the rationalizing with them is easier. The small merchant, you have to first rationalize with them, and then you have to rationalize in a manner saying that, see, not only there is a new technology, it has 1 or 2 additional hops. So for him, he becomes more aversive, right? So there is that amount of negotiation also you need to do with the small merchant. So while convincing a large merchant is, let's say, X time period job, large merchant, it takes 50% more time just to convince him and then implement it, right? So there are various factors around it.
Yeah, no, that's very, very helpful, especially when we are looking at, sort of, it is not like a regulation that will
Yeah.
just impact a few. It is across the board, across all stakeholders, across all the consumers, even in the smallest of the, villages that we will have, right? And for them to understand, to even get and, implement this, right?
Yeah.
Even what do you mean by your consenting to tokenization, right? So Sudipta,
Yes.
would love to hear your thoughts, because you are now in direct, like conversation with the merchants to onboard them on this entire process. Where do you see the readiness? Also, how do you see the entire flow that Mohit mentioned, like taking the consent and have people understood? Because when we are getting into the implementation, even for recurring, people were still confused as to who's taking the consent, right? So, would love to hear your thoughts as to what you have understood, or in this entire process, and your perspective also in terms of the readiness. 6 months to 1 year is what Mohit says. What's your take?
Sure, Gauri. So one thing that I really want to highlight is, if recurring, caused a little bit of a tremor, tokenization is going to cause, 10x, 20x, I don't know how much. Because, recurring might have impacted a select category of merchants, which again impacted smaller merchants which use a recurring thing. I think the whole tokenization will really impact a lot, right? And I'll tell you the reasons why. I think one is the whole card on file tokenization impacts normal, payment processing. So, even if it's not reckoning, it impacts that. It impacts installment payments, right? So if I'm paying a credit card bill, if I'm paying an EMI, it gets impacted, right? It impacts offers, right? So for example, banks, merchants, they, in order to promote, they provide offers, right? Based on the issuer or whatever. So that gets impacted. I think the bigger impact is customer service, right? The whole instant refunds, stuff like that, right? That gets impacted. And somebody mentioned about chargebacks, right? It'll take longer time, right? So I think while tokenization is an innovative kind of a solution, but honestly, what has happened in the last few months, right? I think it has kind of pushed us a little bit back, right? And I'll tell you the reason why. See, if you see the first guideline around token notification that came out, I think was March 2020. But if you look at actually only on September 7th, right, 2021, which is like what, 12 weeks back, the actual solution or the implementation thing came out, right? Which kind of meant that there are only 12 weeks, right? So if I look at now, we are on 14th, right? And this came on September 7th. So it's like, last minute scrambling, which, like Mohit sir rightly mentioned, only large players could do it. So I really feel that it will or it may cause a bit of a issue, 1st Jan, if, we don't see any leniency, right? So, and see, and and the other thing that I also really want to highlight, right? While the overall principle is great, right? That, you want to prevent, frauds, stuff like that, right? But I mean, just can you imagine, like, if I need to take out my card every time, right? And India, there are, like you rightly mentioned, right? Our population is extremely heterogeneous, right? I mean, every 10 million is a different type of people, right? So if I take out my card every time, if I need to enter it, there is a very high chance of phishing and fraud there also, right? I mean, people might just see my card getting entered, or I might have to enter the card somewhere else, right? So one has to also look into or consider the other type of frauds that might happen, right? So I guess these are the things that one needs to take into account. And like how everybody mentioned, right, it's not about individual stakeholders getting ready, but about all the players in the ecosystem, right? Be it the banks, be it the payment system operators, be it the merchants, all need to be cohesively ready. So I think that's where I don't think 12 weeks was really a good time to implement this UFT product.
Sure. So, just if I'm understanding correctly, I think the one question was, first of all, they said that don't store, but we don't know what the solution is. Device-based tokenization was very restrictive, so we kept asking, the industry kept asking, what else? What do you mean? Because the language said anything such as. So, what do you mean by such as? So, industry was scrambling, to sort of figure out, okay, PG storage, can it work? So we said, no, it may not work because you can't do something indirectly what you can't do directly, right? So the industry was for 5-6 months just scrambling with the solution. Suddenly you say September, right? Now the other question we are still struggling and we are getting asked that, okay, this COF is one solution. Will the bank, RBI accept any other solution out there, which is not, where the card is not being stored, but it is not exactly as the solution given by the RBI, right? So that is one question probably still open out there. So Sheetal, before I come to you, I think Huzefa wants to add a quick point, and then Sheetal, over to you. In terms of tokenization, you already touched upon some points, but anything you want to add? Over to you, Huzefa, first.
No, I think just taking cue from what Sudipta and Ashish said, right? I think the touch points vis-a-vis the merchants and the consumers, the touch point is the payment service provider, because it is the payment service provider, whether it's a large merchant, whether it's an SMB, or whether it's a small merchant. In most cases, it is the PSP who's kind of, contracting and getting things in place from a tech perspective as well. So I think one discussion point we should definitely, I'm sure if we are going to speak further on that, is why don't we also recognize the importance of a PSP or a payment aggregator, which is going to be regulated in the ecosystem, in the larger ecosystem, and the immediate nexus to that is solutions such as tokenization or card storage, because basis the current law, if the merchant or the consumer experience can be maintained and security can be afforded from a consumer protection and from a consumer data perspective, wouldn't a payment aggregator play a greater role in the tokenization solution itself? Or shouldn't a payment aggregator play a greater role in card storage details, interplaying vis-a-vis tokenization itself? I think this is an important piece which probably the RBI can reconsider, because when these laws came in, I think one important point, when the law for tokenization, for example, came in 2019, or when recurring payments came in 2019, the payment aggregators were not licensed, or they were not regulated. There were just some scattered intermediary guidelines of 2009. But here things are very different now. The PSP is going to be a regulated entity and can definitely have a greater relevance within the solution itself. They do have a very important role to play. It's just that, can you increase the role which can make the consumer experience more seamless and simultaneously afford the required security? I just thought I'll make these quick
That's
comments.
a very valid point, and I want to take 5 steps back. In one of the conversations on same topic, I was told that the security breaches, right? The amount of the number versus the effort required from a proportionality perspective. Where do we stand? So maybe Sheetal, you can throw some light on that as well. What is your perspective on the need, first of all, to have restrictions on storage of the cards? How do you see that as also from a fraud prevention perspective, etc., creating certain barriers? And overall, on where do you see the readiness? I want you to touch upon these other elements also as a
So
merchant.
Gauri,
Yeah.
I'll answer these questions right at the end. There are a few points that were raised that I would want to first deep dive a bit into. Firstly, the difference between smaller merchants and larger merchants from a card storage perspective. Now, we need to understand that even today, when the industry is storing card, they're storing card as per security mechanisms in place, which is the same for a Visa, MasterCard issuing bank payment aggregator or merchant, which is a PCI DSS level 1. Now we're small. When we say SMEs, it'll be a bigger challenge for SMEs. We need to understand that SMEs are not storing the data today themselves, unless and until they have spent on their PCI DSS level 1. It is the payment aggregator that's storing. So it is the payment aggregator that is going to be working on being the token requester in tokenization and working on that solution, while the larger merchants are storing the data themselves. And by data, I mean the card data to process the transaction basis the same security mechanism or level that's required as per RBI, or that is there globally, which is PCI DSS level 1. So the data is stored with the larger merchants. So when we say a similar solution being provided to an SME and a merchant, yes, identical solutions would be provided if the industry seamlessly gets ready at one point in time, because it is the payment aggregator that is going to be providing that solution like they are today. It's a payment aggregator that stores the data, not the SME, unless and until, again, they've spent on their PCI DSS level 1. So I think that was one point I wanted to clarify while we're having this discussion, that it's not about large merchants or smaller merchants. It is more about the consumer experience being provided. Now, when I had mentioned consumer experience earlier, I wasn't looking at from educating a consumer. Educating the consumer would be the easiest part in this. I think I'm looking at the fact that if an infrastructure is not ready, will my consumer have to punch in their their entire card detail every single time? How do I ensure that issue? And that's coming to what Ashish said, that if we need to delete the data by end of December without having all the cards provisioned, and for merchants that are on reoccurring, being a use case for reoccurring being in place, I am asking my consumer to add in a punch in their card details every day. Now, coming to the third part, when we say that this party is ready or that party is ready or that party, let's divide what tokenization is into 3 buckets, right? First is the consent part. I think the industry is working very well together in trying to find a solution on how adequate consent can collectively be taken for reoccurring and tokenization, everything. Second part is provisioning of the cards. Now, provisioning of the cards means creating the token out of the card details. So this is the card data. I, as a token, a merchant as a token requester, or a payment aggregator as a token requester, sends this across for that data to become tokenized, and a provisioned, a hashed number as a token is provided. Now, that hashed number, why a card scheme token is a solution that the industry was pushing for over any other tokenization, because it's interoperable. It is something that would work agnostically across payment aggregators, agnostically across card schemes. Unlike other solutions where one would be, there'll be lack of interoperability in the same manner that it was being created for reoccurring. Now, when we talk about provisioning of cards, we have the larger card schemes that are ready, but not ready on all banks. When they're not ready on all banks, means that a consumer's card on a bank that's not ready cannot be tokened. Number 2, except for these 2, other card schemes are not ready at all. There's no specs even shared for provisioning of the card. So that's number 2, where we are as an industry. And I'm talking as an industry. I am talking as a payments lawyer, and as an industry, I don't want to say one party ready, 2 party ready, or let's not look at how much I am ready, but let's look at where the reality of where we are. Now let's look at processing of transactions. What the use case that's ready for processing of transaction is a regular e-commerce transaction, which means that a transaction where an individual would provide their card detail, or in this case, provide the token, and then the customer will put in their second level authentication, and the transaction will be processed. However, provisioning of cards. So for example, as we mentioned, on reoccurring transactions, all the banks are it's not fully seamless yet. Everyone is not ready yet. All bank cards cannot be processed as yet. So today, if we provision a card, that card cannot be used to now create a reoccurring mandate. We will have to take a card detail from the consumer. So that use case is not ready, firstly, on tokenization. Number 2, refunds is not ready. So how do you do refunds for the consumers via tokens when that's not ready? Dispute resolution is not ready. So let's look at, again, are we able to provide an identical seamless solution to the consumer today? No. So let's see, the industry as a whole is not ready. And it is not one merchant, 2 merchant, large merchants cannot be ready, because the rest of the players are not ready with these types of use cases. Coming back to provisioning, a point that I missed out. Today, only 5 transactions per second can be provisioned, means a token can be created for only 5 transactions per second. There are billions of transactions and millions of transactions that happen per second. Now, looking at the September 21st guidelines till December 31st, if only 5 transactions can be provisioned, and by the way, it took the industry 2 months to get to a point where people are saying, okay, we're ready now. So stakeholders are now saying we're ready. So I wouldn't even take that date. Let me take beginning of December as a date. If Every single payment aggregator and merchants that are storing card need to provision each card of theirs, and only 5 cards can be provisioned per second. It is impossible for all cards to be provisioned and then purged by December 31st. So again, coming to the point, guys, let's look at this as a holistic solution, not that a merchant is not ready or card scheme's not ready. None of us are ready because all the use cases to provide a seamless solution is not ready. We cannot say that one e-com transaction going through on cards that may get provisioned by December 31st is called readiness. We need to face reality that there is a huge challenge that this will create for the industry. Coming back to what you were saying, Gauri, with regards to requirement of not being able to store card details in the first place. Again, I don't think this is a regulated and an unregulated entity challenge. I think the guidelines, even today, before the PA guidelines had come out, were very clear that anyone who requires it requires the same level of security mechanisms in place. I think it's more about digging into where the security breaches were in the first place. What are we trying to identify? Will removing the entire industry out of storing card detail actually resolve that? Or create more? So cost benefit analysis of that. I would look at it as that. And where are those security breaches? Do we have security experts to say that this is how we can resolve those security issues? Because eventually all of us have the same, I mean, when it comes to individuals who are storing card data, they all have the same level of security in place. So how do we enhance the security is a question I would be looking at if I'm looking at not card tokenization, but looking at can there be a framework that allows an individual to store a card in a way that is more secure? And is that individual storing it in that manner? And having a selective few who are storing in that manner to be allowed to do so would be my take if I'm looking at it that way. But I would say, as coming back to tokenization, a solution that we're very thankful to RBI to come out with. Device tokenization was not a viable solution for merchants. Again, not available on reoccurring either. For me, I would request the regulators and all of us to be looking at September 21st as the date from which the industry started to look towards a viable solution to card storage. We cannot be looking at the date when the PAPG guidelines come out and say that from that date till that day, the industry had enough time. The industry didn't have enough time because industry had no solution. Industry only got a viable solution on September 21st, which again, of course, like anyone would say that if RBI can relook or regulators can relook at how a framework can be created for all of us to store, that'll be great. But if not, then let's look at the timelines from September 21st.
Sure.
And these 12 weeks have not been sufficient for any one of us to be ready. Sorry, I know my answer was a bit long, but I just wanted to touch upon each point everyone raised and just consolidate my thoughts.
No, absolutely. And in fact, when we are, implementing this, so Aaron, you may want to come in here quickly to sort of, before we conclude with Ashish giving a complete overview. And I'm going to, allow Ashish to at least 5-6 minutes because he has heard everybody. So, as an industry body, we would request you to take all these points once again to the Reserve Bank of India, which I'm sure you have been doing. But
Absolutely, because we keep troubling Ashish, only saying, Ashish, ye problems hai. So
yeah, so we are just going to share some additional issues that we as lawyers have faced with some of the queries that came our way. So I'm just going to request Aaron to give a list of those issues that we are struggling with, and then over to Ashish.
Yeah, thanks, Gauri. And again, a bit of a consolidated issues list, if I may call it, because we have, multiple client stakeholders dealing with similar issues. Starting with the consents, I know it's been, discussed especially by, Sheetal and Ashish, but essentially what we have is two independent regimes which now require consents, right? One is the recurring payments where, there was a lot of decline, a lot of friction from October fresh consents had to be taken for recurring payments, and now online merchants are again grappling in terms of taking the tokenization consents. So what we found is that there are a large bucket of consumers that may have already consented to the new recurring payment mandate, but have not or yet to provide a consent for the tokenization solution, right? So there's a big bucket of these consumers where consents will have to be rolled out again, probably causing more friction, in the latency rates to, continue with these users, right? So we essentially both type of consents have to be taken ultimately by the merchant. Going forward, it may be simpler for those who haven't consented to recurring. You could possibly consider clubbing the consents about tokenization and recurring. But there's a lacuna here, a gap in users in 2 months that have not consented to tokenization. Uh, Tokenization, we've discussed this a lot, but we haven't spent a lot of time in terms of tokenization that is not as per the RBI prescribed mandate, right? So we have seen certain solutions in the market, including by some payment aggregators and some payment gateways, that are not specifically as per RBI prescribed tokenization, which is either device-based tokenization or card on file tokenization. The question is, and the gray area means is, are those valid forms of tokenization? So long as the card storage restrictions are abided to, are market players free to choose whatever type of tokenization solution that they want, even if it is not RBI prescribed? If that were the case, then for instance, does a consent even need to be taken? For example, the tokenization framework requires not only a consent to be taken, but also an AFA, like an OTP or a PIN to validate the consent. The merchant has to provide an opt-out or to deregister the token. So if merchants are not following, an RBI prescribed tokenization, do they even need to go down the route, of these compliances in the first place, right? This continues to be a gray area. In terms of purging, I know we've discussed purging, but we've had issues and evaluating business models in terms of what is the timeline to purge? Can there be a graded timeline? And I won't spend time, and the industry experts have already discussed that in detail. But what data needs to be purged? Since there is a relaxation for the last 4 card digits for the issuer's name, can that data continue to be retained? For transaction and reconciliation purpose. So that's not, very clear. Just for everyone's understanding, the regulation merely says that existing data needs to be purged, right? Now, how do you read that with the relaxations, with the timelines? Again, a gray area, and clarity is needed on that as well. We've also gotten separate feedback that merchants, in terms of their own security measures for fraud detection, fraud prevention, anti-money laundering, especially with global, entities that may be involved. So global, best practices, that simply maintaining the last 4 digits and the card issuer's name for transaction tracking and reconciliation purposes is not sufficient, because they can't actually track the transaction. So then the whole purpose of security gets compromised, because from an anti-money laundering perspective or a fraud prevention perspective, it's not enough. So there are calls, for at least bins to be stored. We understand that there has been some guidance on, and some manner in which bins may be able to be stored. Nothing in writing, as far as we understand. But even then, it has to be stored as part of a separate data set. It, may not be able to identify the individual. So is the purpose of security, anti-money laundering measures being compromised, under the garb of the data storage restrictions? So merchants also have their own issues in terms of that. And lastly, I think this is also, just taking a step back. We're also looking very closely at the data protection law. We're expecting a revised, an updated bill, in the winter session of Parliament, tracking that very closely. Just to draw an analogy, right? The last version of the bill that we have from 2019 actually defines financial data. It very much includes, a card number, and it allows data controllers, that is any business, collecting, requiring that data for a particular purpose. It allows them to collect, to store, to process the data, subject to checks and balances, subject to consents, to notices, to security measures being put in place. So, the argument is that when you already have, a general data protection law, which is being studied, earlier by the Justice Sri Krishna Committee, right now by the JPC Committee, which doesn't seemingly prevent, the whole collection, storage, processing of card data, financial data, but merely classifies it as sensitive data, requiring an additional set, of checks and balances. Why does the sectoral law, surpass that and go a step further, preventing players from, handling that data in the first place? It does seem to, overstep, the boundaries in that respect. So largely, these are the issues that need to be ironed out. And back to Gauri.
Thanks, Aaron. So Ashish, would really love your concluding remarks. Of course, your own views on the tokenization as to where we stand, what we need in terms of the timelines, but also what should be the way forward if we were to recommend from today to 14th of December. What would your recommendation be to the industry and more importantly to the Reserve Bank of India?
Thanks, Gauri. So exactly a week back, we did a industry roundtable, and we did an assessment where, where are we and all of that, and we subsequently even wrote to RBI, giving that status in advance of their meeting, which was on 10th. But hearing the panelists today on 14th, and it wasn't even expected, but nothing has changed, right, from the last 7 days. So I wouldn't want to. So I'll avoid giving my own sense of where the journey is, but I think that has been already mentioned by both Mohit, Sheetal, and all of that, that it requires 6 to 9 months kind of a time frame for us to get there. So having said that, and now if I were to kind of summarize this discussion in terms of the way forward, so I think if you look at the recurring payment bucket, right? So there, I think we definitely want to, now that we have incurred these expensive lessons over the last 2 odd months, to kind of at least go back to RBI and say that, look, let's use these experiences to understand the use cases and how it's impacting the subscriptions. So I'll just give you 2 examples. One we already discussed in terms of the annual thing, right? Second is also there are payment plans which have user-based pricing. So which means that you don't know what will be the installment, and therefore how does that work? So basically, I think what RBI needs to do is to say that provide the dashboard to the consumer where he can actually give much more flexibility, where he can set up a merchant level limits, which can be 10,000, 20,000, whatever. And he can even give further flexibility based on the merchant's model to say that, I accept this kind of a pricing model. And then, so that's one. When you come to the card on file tokenization, again, I think both the solutions in some sense, in terms of timeline, have been articulated what is required, a kind of a framework. But I think essentially, if you think of what is coming through the discussions time and again, is 2 parts, right? One is to understand that there is a supply side of this industry from a point of view of networks, banks, and even, let's say, the payment aggregators to an extent, because they actually work for both, right? For merchants as well as the banks and whatever. So I think from that perspective, there is something which we want in terms of readiness. So which is in terms of provisioning, in terms of processing, in terms of scaling up to all the use cases. So that's the step 1. So please get that in order, and we don't know how much time that is going to take, maybe 3 months, 4 months audit. Once you have that, then you think of the user industry, which is really the e-commerce, the online, the merchants. And then once the merchants can see that, okay, the supply side is ready, then I think it will be fairly, you can have a clear visibility on the users getting on board. And I don't think, and I'm mixing up my views along with the summarization, but I don't think it's a matter of, a small merchant vis-a-vis large merchant on this, because I would, as a industry association, think that's a huge opportunity for the payment aggregators and payment gateways, and they are servicing everybody. So it is not that there is a heavy lifting which an SME has to do. It's not a cost or time issue in that sense, right? So everybody is suffering based on their own scales and challenges, but it is not that kind of an issue where you say that, oh, the small guys are to blame. So clearly not that. Second, I think from an RBI perspective, and I'm just, excuse me if I'm sounding a little flippant, but it's also not that you, like income tax department, you say on the 30th, I will extend the deadline. So I'll get everybody to whoever can file till 30th, and then I will extend. This is like a planned thing. I mean, there are business models which are at stake here. So if you know that it is not going to happen, then please give us time now itself. Why do you want to do it on Christmas or New Year Eve, right? So this is another thing that I think we want to tell the RBI. Finally, I think Aaron did specify that, in terms of specifics. So Sheetal mentioned about, having the customer actually enter the all the 16 digits, but there is no clarity on guest checkout also. So you entered that digit nicely, and then you have to be refunded. Then what happens? So I think you need clarity on guest checkout, because saying everybody will enter their card detail while nobody stores anything, it's not going to work. So that's seriously, even if it is a very clunky solution, it is not really a solution. So you need to communicate that. And finally, I think if I were to just my final comment on this, see, we have been talking about regulatory sandboxes. RBI has been releasing cohorts. This could have been a great opportunity for RBI to have invited 6 months back people to say that let's all come together. Let's experiment with various workable solutions, and whatever workable solutions will come as an implemented kind of a thing, then that is what we will scale up at the level of the larger industry. Now, that hasn't happened, but nothing stops RBI from assuming this important role of project management even today, because this is a classic infrastructure issue. There are all these pieces which have to come together. Who will do that? I don't think RBI can strictly be sitting in its role as a regulator. It has to bear the development hat on this and say that, look, I'm going to roll up my sleeves and I'm going to help all of you get together. So the second set of this is RBI publishing a dashboard saying that, look, I'm going to do a fortnightly update to give everybody visibility, and I'm going to bring together all of you on the same page so that we make sure we get there. So I think in substance, that's what it is. And I'm sure I could have missed out a few points, Gauri, but back to you.
No, absolutely. And, it's not like a Y2K situation where, come Jan 1st, 2000, suddenly the computers are going to go shut, right? I mean, you don't need a solution by, for any purpose. So I think sometimes, it's an artificial deadline is the way I look at it. Secondly, if you really want a solution that has to work long term, you need that much homework, time, bug fixing and all of that to go in a particular way. You need, beta testing to happen at different levels, as you rightly said. And once you've had all of that, then you can build a very sustainable long-term solution. And, as I said in one of the conversations, it was even questioned whether you would even need to do this, because if your PS, if you PCI DSS compliant, do we even need to, have this regulation? So one can question the requirement, but let's not go to that extent because RBI has made up its mind. But to give a solution to the industry, can we do something better in terms of the timelines and the manner in which this is implemented, where all the stakeholders are taken into consultation, where, as you rightly said, RBI sets up a unit, to have those conversations. I remember even, you will remember that even when the data protection committee was working, if you remember, Ashish, we had this, where the committee was going to different, even smaller cities to take feedback, right? So can that kind of a, approach can be obtained, adopted by the RBI to, look at that India, just don't look at the bigger, players, but look at the smaller players and how to have an inclusive development and the laws and regulations, which is more inclusive, where people can come together and find a solution in a sandbox manner, as you mentioned. So, that's a brilliant solution. What we intend to do is we may create like a summary of what we discussed in terms of the issues faced and the possible solutions, and, make kind of a
just a one quick point, Gauri. So even when you say consent, right? So for example, the PDP bill as it stands doesn't require consent for encryption, because
Yes.
the consent is for the purpose for which the data will be used, and encryption is a intermediate step to do something in the benefit of consumer and generally, right? So
Why
from a
Aaron
point of view of
mentioned,
tokenization, I mean, to my mind, it still boggles that why do you need consent for tokenization? Because I'm not in the business of tokenization, right? I'm in the business of processing your transaction. So So I think we kind of need to probably also weave that in our conversation.
No, absolutely. And just wanted to add in one more thing, like rightly said by Ashish, this is a backend infrastructure.
Yeah.
Adequate consent from consumers have already been taken to store card details, and this is card details, not storage of tokens. So when a consent has been already adequately taken to store card details, a backend infrastructure that is storing it as a token over as a hash number, which was required as per PCI, we don't, honestly, it boggles all of us on why consent is required for that.
Absolutely.
When consent is required to store the card, the consumer doesn't care if the card is in a token form with the merchant or if the card is, they just want a secure transaction to be processed.
No,
and they're actually storing and giving consent to the merchants today, or payment aggregators, depending on the merchant, to store this card data. And they give that consent basis the security level or what the comfort level they have with a particular merchant. So at the back end, how it's stored, why that would require additional consent is very confusing.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. So I know we have gone beyond time, scheduled time, but I think this was a very, very valuable discussion. Thanks, all of you, Mohit and Absentia, to sort of contribute to this. If panel members have any last comments, welcome, but otherwise we can close our conversation. But we will definitely summarize this, and thanks to NASSCOM for coming as a partner on this event. We really value our relationship with NASSCOM, and look forward to doing many more such interactive sessions. And of course, maybe if at all we want to do one more, we could consider getting into specifics on some of the issues discussed. But happy to have any last comments. Otherwise, I can declare that this event is concluded. Okay, thank you all. Thanks for being with us in the afternoon. I can still see that the number of participants have continued. And request the participants to send across their experiences, their feedback as well. In the next couple of days, we will come out with our recommendations basis today's discussion. So would love to include any feedback that the participants also may have. With that, thank you all and have a great evening.